The cold of space stretched endlessly around her. Queen Lyra of the Varelians floated in silence, her once great warship now a broken shell drifting through the stars. She stood alone on the bridge, watching the dark void stretch out before her like a wound that would never heal. Behind her were memories of power, respect, and duty. Ahead was nothing but exile. Her people had turned against her. The council she once trusted had called her weak, a traitor to her own kind. They said she had dishonored the empire by refusing to destroy a weaker race. She had argued for mercy, for peace. But to them, that was failure. So they cast her out, stripping her of title, home, and hope. Now she was no longer queen. She was an outcast. Days passed slowly aboard the ship. Food was limited, systems were failing, and the silence pressed down on her like a weight. She wore the robes of royalty. Still, not because she clung to pride, but because there was nothing else left. Her people had taken everything, her throne, her name, even her dignity. But they could not take her will to survive. Far away on Earth, a man named Luke Carter sat at his desk, staring at reports he barely understood. He worked for the United Earth Coalition, though most days he felt like a ghost in the system. He wasn't a soldier or a scientist, just a diplomat trying to find his place in a world that valued strength over kindness. He had grown up believing that words could change the world, that understanding could prevent wars. But reality had been cruel. His last mission ended in failure, and now he was stuck reviewing alien contact logs from the edge of known space. One report caught his eye. A strange energy spike near the old Varelian border. Something was out there, damaged and alone. Curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to investigate. His small observation pod cut through space like a quiet whisper. The stars blinked above him, calm and uncaring. As he neared the coordinates, his sensors picked up a massive object. Something big, something broken. Then he saw it. A Varelian cruiser, battered and lifeless, floating like a corpse in the dark. He hesitated. Varelians were powerful, proud, and dangerous. Their empire had always kept its distance from humans. What could have happened to this ship? And who, if anyone, was still alive? Before he could turn back, the damaged cruiser released a pulse of energy. His controls flickered, alarms blared, and then, impact. His pod was pulled into the larger ship's docking bay by some automatic system. He landed with a heavy jolt, heart pounding. He checked his suit, made sure his comms were working, and stepped out. The bay was dimly lit, the air recycled but thin. He moved carefully, hand near, his sidearm. Then he saw her. She stood tall, regal even in exile. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes sharp and tired. She wore torn royal robes, and though she looked exhausted, she held herself like a queen. "Who are you?" she asked, voice low and strong. "Luke Carter," he said, surprised at how steady his voice sounded. I didn't mean to intrude." She studied him, suspicion in her gaze. "You're human." "Yes. Why are you here?" He glanced around. "Your ship sent out a distress signal, or something like one." "I came to check." She didn't smile, but something in her face softened. "You risked your life to see if someone needed help?" "Well," he shrugged, "it seemed like the right thing to do." For the first time since her fall, Lyra felt something unfamiliar. Hope. She stepped forward, offering no threat, only presence. "My name is Lyra. I was queen of the Varelians." "Was," he asked. "I am no longer welcome among my people." There was silence between them, filled only by the hum of failing lights and distant machinery. "Can I help?" he asked. She looked at him again. Really looked. Not as a warrior, not as a leader, but as a person who had lost everything. "Perhaps," she said quietly. And in that moment, 2 lives changed forever. Luke didn't know what to do next. He had met diplomats from other planets before, but never a queen, especially not one who had been thrown away by her own people. Lyra stood tall despite everything, but he could see the sadness behind her eyes. She led him through the dark halls of her ship. The lights flickered in some places, and in others, they were out completely. The air was cool and dry, and every step echoed like a whisper from the past. "This ship is old," she said, her voice calm but tired. "It was once powerful, feared across the stars. Now it barely holds together." Luke looked around. "You've kept it running pretty well." She gave him a small look, almost surprised. "You are kind." They reached what used to be the command center. Broken screens lined the walls, and wires hung loose from the ceiling. Lyra sat at the main console and tried to bring up the systems. Only part of the screen lit up. "I need help," she admitted. "My power reserves are low. Life support will fail soon." "Can I do something?" Luke asked. She studied him, again trying to understand why this human had come. Most would have turned back when they saw a Varelian ship. Most would have run. "Yes," she said finally, "if you are willing." Over the next few hours, they worked side by side. Luke wasn't an engineer, but he had learned enough during his training to be useful. He helped reroute power, fixed minor leaks in the cooling system, and ran scans to find nearby resources. As they worked, they talked. Slowly, carefully, like two strangers walking on thin ice. Lyra told him about her people, their strength, their pride, their belief that mercy was weakness. She spoke of the council that had betrayed her, how they had called her unfit to rule because she refused to destroy a weaker race. Luke listened, not judging, just listening. And when she finished, he said, "You did the right thing." She looked at him surprised. "Most would say I was foolish, maybe, but I think you were brave." For the first time since her exile, Lyra felt something warm inside her. Not hope, not yet, but something close. They managed to stabilize the ship's power for now. It wouldn't last forever, but it would keep them alive a little longer. As they rested, Luke looked out of a cracked window into space. "So, what now?" Lyra joined him. "I do not know. I have no home, no people. I am nothing." He shook his head. "You're not nothing. You're still you. And maybe we can figure something out." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she watched the stars with him. Quiet, thoughtful. Days passed as they traveled deeper into uncharted space. They shared food, stories, and silence. Sometimes they argued, mostly over small things. Other times they laughed, softly, like they were afraid to break the moment. Luke found himself admiring her strength. She had lost everything, yet she still stood tall. She still believed in something better. And Lyra, for all her doubts, began to trust him. Not fully, not yet, but enough to believe that maybe, just maybe, she hadn't been left alone after all. One night, as they sat near the dim light of a broken console, Luke said, "You don't have to stay out here alone." She looked at him. "What are you saying?" He shrugged. "I don't know exactly, but Earth isn't perfect, and neither am I, but maybe there's a place for you there." She didn't speak for a long time. Then softly she said, "Why would you offer me that?" He smiled. "Because you deserve better than this." Outside, the stars shined cold and bright. But inside, something was beginning to change. Two lives, once separate, now drifting towards something new, something neither of them had expected. As the days passed, Luke and Lyra became more than just two strangers sharing a broken ship. They talked late into the night, shared meals from Luke's small supply kit, and worked together to keep the old cruiser alive. Slowly, the silence between them grew comfortable, not heavy like before. But even with the growing trust, Lyra still kept part of herself hidden. She spoke of her people, of the stars, of war and peace, but never of the pain that came with losing everything. One evening, while the ship drifted near a quiet corner of space, Luke found her alone on the observation deck. She was staring out at the stars, her expression unreadable. "You've been quiet today," he said, stepping beside her. She didn't look away from the window. "I have been thinking." "About what?" "My people, my past, the choices I made." Luke leaned against the wall. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to." She finally turned to him. No, maybe I should. He waited, giving her time. My empire has always believed in strength, she began. To show mercy was to invite weakness. To refuse war was to invite shame. Luke nodded, listening. There was a planet, she continued. Small, weak by our standards. They had no weapons, no defenses. The Council wanted to take their world, use it for resources. I refused. Why? Luke asked softly. Because they were not a threat. They did not deserve to suffer just because we could make them suffer. Luke looked at her with something close to respect. So you stood up to them? Yes, she said. And they called me a fool. They said I had failed my people. They took everything from me. A silence settled between them, not awkward, but deep. You did the right thing, Luke said again, just like before. Lyra gave a soft, tired smile. You say that like it makes it easier, doesn't it? Sometimes. Other times it feels like I gave up everything for nothing. They both looked out at the stars again. You didn't give it up for nothing, Luke said. You gave it up for something better. Maybe not now, maybe not here, but somewhere someone will remember what you did. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she watched the slow drift of planets and stars, as if searching for proof of his words. Later that night, they sat together, in the command room, trying to fix a damaged communication panel. Sparks flew every now and then, and Luke wiped sweat from his brow. Do you miss Earth? She asked suddenly. He looked up. Yeah, sometimes. It's not perfect, but it's home. What do you miss most? The noise. He laughed. People talking, music playing, rain on windows. Out here, it's too quiet. She thought about that. I used to hate the noise, the voices of the council, the demands of duty. Now I would give anything to hear them again. He gave her a gentle look. You'll find your place again, I know it. She shook her head. I don't know if I want to go back, not after what they did to me. Then build something new, he said simply. She raised an eyebrow. Like what? Like a life where you're not just a queen. Where you're just Lyra. She stared at him for a moment, then smiled. Not a big one, but real. That sounds strange, she said. Strange can be good, he replied. Outside, the stars shined cold and endless. Inside, two hearts beat a little stronger. Two lives once lost, now finding something worth holding on to. Something neither of them had expected. Hope. Luke sat at the edge of the command deck, looking at the small screen in his hand. The message had come through a few hours ago. Weak, broken up by static, but clear enough to understand. Earth wanted him back. Not just for a visit, but for good. His heart felt heavy. He had spent weeks with Lyra, drifting through space, fixing her broken ship, sharing stories, and slowly building something real. He didn't want to leave her behind, but he couldn't ignore the call from home either. He looked over at Lyra. She was working on the power core, her hands moving with careful skill. Even after everything, she still held herself like a queen. Proud, strong, never giving up. He stood up and walked over. I got a message, he said quietly. She paused, wiping sweat from her brow. From where? Earth. Her expression changed just slightly. Not anger, not sadness, just understanding. You have to go, she said. He shook his head. Not yet, I haven't decided. She turned off the tool in her hand and faced him fully. You don't belong out here. You have a life waiting for you. A purpose. So do you, he replied. She gave a soft laugh, almost bitter. I don't even know what that means anymore. They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the ship filling the space between them. Finally, Luke took a deep breath. What if you came with me? Lyra blinked. What? What if you came to Earth, not as an exile, not as a fugitive, but as someone who needs a second chance? Her eyes narrowed. You're serious? Yes. We could make it work. There are people who would help us. Diplomats, leaders who believe in peace. She shook her head. It won't be that easy. No, he admitted. It won't. But it's better than staying out here alone. She looked away, thinking. The idea was absurd. A Varelian queen stepping foot on human soil? It would cause chaos, fear, maybe even war, and yet, the thought of going somewhere new, of starting over, it stirred something inside her. How? She asked finally. Luke smiled a little. There's a rule in our system. Aliens can gain temporary status if they're part of a human family. Her eyes widened. You mean marriage, he said simply. The word hung in the air like a star caught between gravity and flight. A marriage of convenience, he added quickly. Just paper, just enough to get you in the door. Lyra stared at him. You would do that? Risk everything for me? You did the same for a weaker race, he said. Maybe it's my turn to be brave. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked over to the cracked window and looked out into space. My people would call this treason, she whispered. Then don't tell them, Luke said. She turned back to him. What about your world? Your people will see me as a threat. Some will, he admitted. But not all. And I'll be there with you every step of the way. She studied his face, searching for doubt, for hesitation. But all she saw was honesty. Why are you doing this? She asked. Because you deserve better than exile, he said. And because I think we've built something worth fighting for. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. If we do this, there's no turning back. I know, he said. For the first time since she lost her throne, Lyra felt something shift inside her. Not fear, not pain, but possibility. Okay, she said softly. We do this. Luke nodded, a quiet smile on his lips. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright. Inside, 2 lives were about to change forever. 2 hearts, once lost, now choosing a future together, even if it meant facing the whole galaxy. The idea of marriage hung between them like a storm waiting to break. Luke had said the words and Lyra had agreed, but neither of them knew what it truly meant. They spent the next few days preparing. They gathered data, sent coded messages to Luke's contacts on Earth and tried to figure out how to make this work without causing panic or war. Luke explained the rules again. If we do this, you'll be under watch. People will ask questions. Some won't like it. And you? She asked. What will they say about you? He shrugged. Probably that I've gone crazy. Maybe worse. She looked at him carefully. You would risk your life for this? I already did, he said with a small smile. Just now, standing here with you. They shared a quiet laugh, but it didn't last long. Reality was closing in fast. Soon they began sending formal requests through unofficial channels. Luke reached out to an old friend, Maria Ellis, who worked in interstellar law. She was shocked when she saw the message, but after hearing their story, she agreed to help. This is insane, she told Luke over a secure channel. Maybe, he said. But it's the right thing. Maria sighed. Fine. I'll start the paperwork. But if this blows up, don't come running to me. Meanwhile, Lyra tried to prepare herself. She read everything she could find on human customs, laws, and traditions. She learned about weddings. Not just the legal side, but the meaning behind them. It's not just a contract, she said one night, looking at Luke. To your people, it means something deeper. Yes, he admitted. But for us, it doesn't have to mean more than what it is. A way forward. She studied his face. Are you sure? He hesitated, then gave a soft smile. I'm not sure about a lot of things, but I know this feels right. As they got closer to Earth, space tension grew. Luke's messages were being watched. Reports of a possible alien-human union started leaking into the wrong hands. One day, while they were still several jumps away from Earth, they received a new message, this time from the Varelian Empire. Lyra froze when she saw the symbol on the screen. It was the Council, her former advisors, the ones who had cast her out. Luke stood beside her. Do you want to open it? She nodded slowly. The message played. A cold, sharp voice filled the room. Queen Lyra, you are hereby ordered to return to Varelian space immediately. Failure to comply will be considered treason. There was no greeting. No mercy. Lyra's hands tightened into fists. They think they still have power over me. Do they? Luke asked. She shook her head. Not anymore. Still, the message left its mark. The past was not done with her. And if they found out about the marriage plan, there would be consequences. Days passed, and soon they were close enough to make contact with Earth. Luke arranged a secret docking at a remote station near the planet's orbit. Before they left, the ship, Lyra stopped him. Once we step off this vessel, there is no going back. Luke met her gaze. Then we walk forward together. They stepped onto the station side by side. Reporters were already waiting. Cameras flashed. Voices shouted. Questions. Lyra stayed calm, but inside her heart pounded. Luke kept his head high, answering only what he had to. Word spread quickly. A human diplomat and a Varelian queen. Planning to marry. The news hit the world like thunder. Some called it a brave act of unity. Others called it betrayal. But none of that mattered now. They had made their choice. And the galaxy was watching. Two lives, once separate, now bound by fate. Two hearts, stepping into the unknown. Together. The moment the news broke, everything changed. Reporters followed Luke wherever he went. Strangers stared at him on the streets. Some cheered him as a hero. Others spat his name like a curse. Everywhere he turned, there were voices. Talking, shouting, judging. Lyra stayed mostly out of sight. She wasn't allowed to move freely yet. Government officials had placed her under watch, citing security concerns. She lived in a small, quiet apartment with guards just outside the door. She was not in chains, but she was not free either. Luke tried to stay close. He visited when he could, bringing food, books, or just silence to share. They talked about the stars, about old memories, about anything that kept them grounded. But even in those quiet moments, the weight of the world pressed down on them. One night, Luke sat across from her at a small table. They're calling me a traitor, he said, voice low. She looked up. Who? Some politicians, some military leaders, even a few people I used to work with. And what do you say? He shrugged. I don't say much. What can I say? That I believe in something better? She gave a small smile. You always did. He reached across the table and touched her hand gently. I meant what I said. I want this to work. She didn't pull away. Instead, she let his fingers rest against hers. So do I. But outside their little world, things were falling apart. A few days later, Luke was called in for questioning. Government agents asked him about Lyra, where she came from, what she wanted, if she had any hidden plans. They searched his home, read his messages, listened to every word he had ever spoken in public. Meanwhile, Lyra was taken to a secure facility for more interviews. Scientists studied her, diplomats tested her loyalties, and soldiers watched her every move like she might attack at any second. Still, neither of them backed down. They told the truth, that Lyra had been cast out by her own people, that she had done nothing to harm humans, that their marriage was not about politics, it was about choice. But no one seemed to care about that. Then came the worst day. A group of rogue extremists attacked Luke's old office. They blamed him for what they called the alien invasion. The building was damaged. People were hurt. Luke barely escaped with his life. When he returned to see Lyra, he was bruised and tired. His clothes were torn. His eyes held something new, fear. She rushed to him. What happened? He shook his head. Someone wanted to send a message. She helped him sit down. About us? About you, he said. They think you're dangerous. That you tricked me. That you're trying to take over Earth. She looked away. I knew this would happen. It doesn't matter, he said. They can't stop us. But then the worst news came. Lyra was being charged with espionage. The government claimed she had too much access to human systems, that her presence was a risk to national security. And worse, they said Luke had broken laws by helping her. She was arrested. The next time they saw each other, it was through a thick glass wall in a cold, gray room. Guards stood behind her. Lawyers sat beside him. Luke pressed his hand against the glass. "We'll fight this." She put her hand where his was on the other side. "I know." Outside, the world screamed their names. Inside, two hearts still beat as one. Two lives once separate, now caught in a storm. But even in the darkest moments, they still believed in each other. The courtroom was full. People from all over Earth had come to see the trial. Some came to watch justice happen. Others came just to see aliens suffer. Luke sat at one end of the room, dressed in his best suit. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. Beside him were his lawyers, friends who still believed in him, even when the whole world seemed against them. Lyra sat across from him, guarded and silent. She wore no crown, no royal robes, only plain clothes, and a calm look on her face. She did not seem afraid. The judge entered. The room grew quiet. The trial began. The prosecutor stood first. He was tall, loud, and angry. "This woman," he said, pointing at Lyra, "is not a refugee. She is not a friend. She is an alien queen who used lies and charm to control a human diplomat." He turned to the crowd. "She came here with one goal, to weaken our world from the inside." Whispers filled the room like wind through broken glass. Then it was Luke's turn to speak. He stood slowly, hands steady. "What you just heard," he said, "is not true." His voice was calm but strong. "Lyra did not trick me. She did not force me to help her. I chose to do it, because she is not what you think." He looked at her, then back at the judge. "She was cast out by her own people because she refused to destroy a weaker race. She gave up everything to do what was right." The prosecutor scoffed. "You expect us to believe that?" "Yes," Luke said, "because it's the truth." A silence fell over the room. Just then one of Luke's lawyers stood. "Your Honor, we have new evidence." The judge nodded. A screen lit up behind them. Files began to appear, classified. Reports, intercepted messages, and secret logs taken from old Varelian war records. Luke's lawyer pointed. "These documents prove that the Varelian Empire planned to attack Earth. They called humans weak, easy targets. They believed conquest was their right." He paused, but Lyra stopped them. The room filled with gasps. "She knew about the plan," the lawyer continued. "And she tried to stop it. That's why she was exiled. That's why she was hunted." Luke stepped forward again. "She didn't come here to hurt us. She came here because she had nowhere else to go." He looked at the judge, at the crowd, at the guards. "If anyone here believes that doing the right thing should be punished, then lock us both away." The courtroom went silent. Then a voice from the back. "I believe her." Everyone turned. It was a reporter, one of the first to meet Lyra after she arrived. "I've seen the way she talks, the way she acts. She doesn't want war. She wants peace." Another voice joined. "I've read the files. This isn't fake." Soon, more voices rose, some in the crowd, some outside, some watching on screens across the world. For the first time since the trial began, the tide started to shift. The judge called for order. "We will take a break, reconvene tomorrow morning." As the guards led Lyra away, she looked back at Luke. He gave her a small smile. She nodded. They weren't free yet, but the truth had been spoken, and once spoken, it could never be fully silenced. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright. Inside, two hearts beat, with quiet hope. Two lives once lost in shadow, now walking toward the light. The verdict came the next morning. Luke and Lyra stood before the judge, surrounded by guards and silence. The courtroom was full again, but this time the mood had changed. People were no longer sure what to believe. The truth had shaken them. After a long pause, the judge spoke. Due to new evidence and the changing nature of this case, she said, charges against Queen Lyra are reduced. She will not be imprisoned. A quiet wave of shock passed through the room. However, the judge continued, there are still concerns about security and diplomacy. Luke stepped forward. What does that mean? It means, the judge said, that you and Queen Lyra may marry, but under strict conditions. The conditions were clear. They would live under observation. Lyra could not leave Earth without permission. She would not be allowed to contact her people. And if any sign of betrayal was found, both she and Luke would face consequences. It wasn't full freedom, but it was something. They agreed. The wedding was small. Only a few people attended, lawyers, friends, reporters who had followed the story from the start. There were no grand speeches or celebrations, just two people standing together making a promise. As they said their vows, Luke looked into Lyra's eyes and saw something he hadn't seen before. Not pain, not fear, but peace. Outside, the stars watched silently, but not everyone was happy with the decision. Not long after the wedding, a message arrived from deep space. Luke was the first to see it. He played it on a secure screen late at night while Lyra slept nearby. The voice was cold, sharp, familiar. It was the Varelian Council. Queen Lyra, the message began. You have dishonored our empire not once, but twice. First by refusing war. Now by joining with our enemy. There was a pause. Your marriage is an act of treason. Your home is no longer yours. And for this, we will make your new world suffer. The message ended. Luke turned slowly to look at Lyra. She was awake, now standing in the doorway, her face pale. They know, she whispered. He nodded. Yes. Within days, reports came in. Varelian ships had been spotted near Earth's borders. They weren't hiding anymore. They were watching, waiting. War was coming. Luke and Lyra went to the United Earth Coalition with everything they had. They warned them, begged them to prepare, but the leaders hesitated. Some believed the Varelians were bluffing. Others thought Lyra was the reason for the threat. This wouldn't have happened if she wasn't here, one general said. Luke stood up. No. This happened because she stood up to them, because she refused to destroy innocent lives. He turned to the leaders. If we don't act now, we'll all pay the price. Finally, after much debate, a plan was made. Luke and Lyra would lead a small team back to Varelian space. They would go straight to the heart of the Empire. Not to fight, but to stop the war before it began. Some called them crazy. Others called them brave. They didn't care. They packed what they needed, said goodbye to the few who understood, and stepped onto a small ship bound for the stars. Behind them, Earth watched and waited. In front of them, danger. Two lives once, separate, now bound by fate. Two hearts flying into the unknown, toward a battle that would decide the future of both their worlds. The ship landed on Varelian soil under heavy watch. Tall towers loomed above them, glowing with cold light. Guards stood in rows, watching every move. The air was thick with silence. Not peace, but waiting. Luke stepped out first, his heart pounding. He adjusted his coat and looked around. This place was nothing like Earth. Everything felt sharp, controlled, powerful. Behind him, Lyra followed. She didn't look afraid. She looked like a queen returning to what was hers. They were met by a group of armored soldiers. One stepped forward, voice calm but firm. Queen Lyra, you are not welcome here. I am not here to beg for welcome, she said. I am here to speak. The soldier looked at Luke. And why is this human here? Luke answered without hesitation. Because he stands with me. There was a pause. Then the soldier nodded. Follow us. They were taken through dark halls lined with ancient symbols, paintings of past wars, of victories won with strength and fire. No mercy, no kindness. Finally, they entered the great hall. The council was already there. 12 figures seated in a circle, faces cold, eyes sharp. One of them, an older woman with silver markings on her skin, spoke first. "You returned to us like a ghost." Lyra stood tall. "I returned to speak the truth," the council leader gave a thin smile. "Truth, or lies dressed in weakness?" Luke stepped beside Lyra. "We brought proof. Proof that you planned to attack Earth. Proof that Lyra tried to stop you." He held up a small device. With a press of a button, data filled the air. Messages, records, secret logs from old ships, all showing the Council's plan to destroy humanity before they could grow strong. Gasps came from some of the younger Council members. Others stayed silent. The leader frowned. "This means nothing." "It means everything," Lyra said. "You lied to our people. You told them humans were weak, that they would never stand against us. But I have seen their hearts. They are not weak. They are brave." A man on the far end of the circle stood. "You speak like a traitor." "No," Lyra said. "I speak like a leader, one who believes in something more than war." A deep silence filled the room. Then, a voice rose from the back. "I believe her." Another voice joined. "I've read the files. She speaks the truth." Soon, more voices followed, some unsure, some strong. The council was not united anymore. Outside, crowds had gathered. Word had spread quickly. Some believed Lyra. Others still saw her as a traitor. Then came the moment that changed everything. A young officer stepped forward. "If she is telling the truth, if we were wrong about humans, then maybe it is time we listened." The council leader stood. Enough. But it was too late. The people had heard. The truth had been spoken. And once spoken, it could never be silenced again. That night, Lyra and Luke sat together on a balcony overlooking the city. Lights flickered below like stars fallen to the ground. "You did it," Luke said softly. "Not yet," she replied. "But maybe, just maybe, things can change." He smiled. "They already have. 2 lives, once lost in fear and exile. Now, standing strong side by side. 2 hearts once broken, now beating with hope. For the first time in a long time, peace felt possible. Peace did not come overnight. Change never does. After the trial, after the truth had been spoken, the Varelian Empire began to shift. Slowly, like the turning of a great ship in deep space. Some still resisted. Some still saw humans as weak, as enemies, but others listened. Lyra was not given back her throne right away. She earned it, piece by piece, as more people came to believe in her vision. Not one of conquest or fear, but of unity and strength through understanding. Luke stayed by her side. He could have returned to Earth, gone back to his old life, but he chose to stay, not just for her, but for what they had started together. They traveled between worlds, speaking to leaders, meeting with diplomats, helping both humans and Varelians learn to trust each other. At first, people watched them, with suspicion, then with curiosity, then slowly with hope. On Earth, the news spread fast. Schools began teaching about Varelian culture. Scientists worked together on new technology. Traders made deals. Peace grew like a seed in dry soil. And yet, even with all that, Luke and Lyra did not seek fame or power. They lived simply, quietly, often far from the eyes of the public. They worked behind the scenes, building bridges no warships could cross. One evening, they sat together on a small balcony overlooking the capital city of the Varelian homeworld. The sky was dark, filled with stars that burned cold and bright. Luke looked at her. "Do you ever miss the quiet days?" She smiled. "The days when we were alone on your little pod, drifting through space?" "Yeah," he said. "Those." She leaned against the railing. "Sometimes, but I do not regret this." "Me neither," he said. They sat in silence for a while, just watching the stars. Then she turned to him. "Do you ever think, if things had been different, We would have met at all? He thought about it. Maybe not. But maybe we were always meant to. She gave a soft laugh. You still speak like a diplomat. He grinned. Old habits. They looked at each other. Really looked. Time had changed them both. They had seen pain, loss, war, and victory. But through it all, they had never let go. Not of their cause. Not of each other. Thank you, she said suddenly. He raised an eyebrow. For what? For believing in me, she said. When no one else did. He reached for her hand. You didn't need me to believe in you. You just needed the world to see what I saw. She held his hand gently. And what is that? He smiled. A queen, a leader, a friend, someone worth fighting for. Outside, the wind whispered through the tall towers. Inside, two hearts beat steady and sure. They were not perfect. They made mistakes. They faced doubt, fear, and danger more than once, but they never gave up. And now, standing at the edge of a new era, they knew their work was not done. There would always be more to learn, more to build, more to protect. But for the first time in a long time, they were not alone. Two lives, once lost in the stars, now found, together, forever.